morning. Thanks for attending. In a nutshell, we think we have one of the more significant discoveries in South America, and definitely in Bolivia over the last 150 to 200 years. It is a substantial silver tin deposit, polymetallic, collapsed resurgent volcano that has never been drilled prior to us coming on the property in 2020. Came out with a resource in 2023. And since that time, all we've been doing is infill drilling and proving up the economics of this deposit. So I'll walk you through it. So, as I mentioned previously, when we came upon the property and started working it on 2020, it had never been drilled before. It's on private land, and essentially what had happened is our current landowner was following a small vein using old artisanal adit, and basically he went for about 200 meters, found this little vein, and then he ran into a significant breccia pipe and didn't know how to process it. And so in a roundabout way, he basically got in contact with the head of our VP of operations in Bolivia, Dr. Oswaldo Arce, who was at the time the head of the Geological Society of Bolivia. And he'd also worked with us on a previous project in Peru. And so he brought this project to us. And like I mentioned previously, we think it's a fantastic one. Big number, 560 million tons, grade probably a little bit lower than what we wanted. And essentially what that was is that as it had never been drilled before, we kept on drilling and drilling and drilling and trying to find directions. There's multiple faults, there's multiple breccia pipes. And so we came out with a resource, I'm going to say a little too early, but I would like to point out that there's a higher grade portion of this deposit, like 132 million tons, 25 gram silver. We've done about, we did about 97 to 98,000 meters at that point. We're about 120 right now. We think we can get that 132 to 150 to 180 and get that grade up to about 30 to 35. Very similar what you have with San Cristobal in the country, which is a similar type deposit as this. That being said, it's still a big number. It's almost 300 million ounces. When we go through the resource statement, we're going to have a new resource statement by year end. We think that, although the ton's probably not going to increase, we think we can get that grade up. And one of the things that we have that not many people have on a global basis is tin. That is probably one of the more critical minerals that nobody ever talks about. You can't have technology without tin. It's the glue that basically binds everything. So we think we have really two deposits here. Shares have done okay. You can see the big drop down is really when we did our resource statement in October 2023. And so since that time, all we've been doing is drilling and metallurgical work. It's not very flashy, but we've had some really nice drill results that we can kind of go over. Management and board owns 25% of the stock. Majority of that is money that's been brought in. It's not RSUs or options. Institutional is 25%. Crescat is around 14% of that. They've actually used their knowledge within our company to actually go and do the private and take over San Cristobal from Sumitomo. So they really like the country, as do we. Management team, I just kind of point out Tom is our CEO, former chairman of Champion Minerals, that became Champion Iron. He owns 8 million of the shares, so he is solely focused on driving shareholder value. And I mentioned previously, Quentin is a technical advisor, and he's used that within Crescat to go into San Cristobal. And then I guess more importantly is really Oswaldo Arce. He's the head of our operations in Bolivia. Bolivia is a very small country when it comes to mining. He was the head of the Geological Society. Everybody knows him. He was just asked to be the mines minister from the government that has now been put into power in Bolivia, and he turned them down. He's staying with us, so that's fantastic. For those of you who aren't familiar with Bolivia, it really is an underdeveloped country. It's challenged economically. Arguably, they went down that socialist route for 20 to 25 years. It hasn't worked out for them. We've seen with Paz coming in and the new centrist to right form government, people should not take this lightly. It is a significant change in the country. We think it's going to go the way of Argentina and go in and developments. One of the first meetings they had was with Marco Rubio and the US government. There's multiple critical minerals in the country that have not been taken up by majors globally, and we think that will change with the newfound relationship with the US government. If you're talking big tonnage moving here, like we think we have, 20 to 35,000 tons a day, you need infrastructure. If you draw like a 30 to 40 kilometer circle around Iska Iska, we've got 3-volt, three-way power, paved road, rail, we have water pointed out, we have a tailings facility all highlighted. So when we come and do our PEA in Q1 of next year, it will be a decent PEA where, we're gonna have our tailings and all the water and all that figured out, and we're not just gonna leave that to the PFS. Definitive option agreement, originally the deal was for 10 million US. We've got 1.15 left to pay by January of 2026. We're trying to get that done sooner than later. The issue is that he's got a really nice zinc mine in there that he wants to separate, and I would actually like to have it. But that'll be done. We'll have that. We'll have the property 100% by year end. And if you're looking for catalysts on this, it would really be that would be one. We're going to see a lot coming out of the government in terms of changing to the mining regulations that make it much more amenable to international investors. We're going to have drilling through year end, and then we're going to have a resource statement even before we get to the PEA. One of the things that we like to talk about that's really important for us is that we do have social buy-in. There's 4 communities around us. We've all signed them up. Anything that we've done from in terms of building sanitation units or infrastructure or anything that we hire locally, there's been no negative feedback from the local communities. And you can talk about wanting to produce somewhere globally, and Bolivia might be a challenge at the larger level, but it really hasn't been for us. Or you can talk about it in North America. If you don't have local support, you have nothing. And we have local support. They're dying for work. They're economically challenged. It is an area around Tupiza that has been mining friendly for 300 to 400 years kind of thing. So when we look at this, we've signed it up socially. 95% of our staff in Bolivia is Bolivian. The only one that's not is a person that's charging ESG, and she's from Ecuador, but has relationships in Bolivia. So if we ever get to the point where somebody decides that they want a Bolivian operations, it's really simple because all of our technical staff, all of the people in country are Bolivian. So really, all you need to do is take off the top hat, and the rest is theirs for years. Quick view of the caldera complex. As I mentioned previously, it's collapsed resurgent volcano. There's no artisanal miners that have ever been on this. There's no native flora or animals that it's their breeding ground. There's no historical workings that are ancient or anything of that nature. Despite being 40 kilometers away from a town of 35 to 40,000 people, there's nothing on it. It is a fantastic place to operate. Top of the mountain is 4,100 meters. The bottom is 3,000. So when we're talking about drilling 500 to 600 meter wells or drills, you're only halfway down the mountain. Geology and mineralization, I mentioned a little bit about this. Multiple breccia pipes. And what I would really like to highlight here is basically, you're talking about a strike length of 2.5 by 2 kilometers. The black outline there is our original MRE, and the highlighted red one is where our potential starter pit would be. And that's kind of where that 180, 150, 200 million tons of, 30 to 35 grams silver is going to be associated with it. But that being said, there's still areas within this that haven't been drilled, like the Porco, the Domo San Juan. There's other areas within this caldera that we haven't even touched yet, and we've drilled like 120,000 meters. So if you're talking about resource potential, there's not only other areas within this, but there's also a depth and width. These are just some of our higher grade intercepts to date. I will just point out to basically the size of the intercepts that we're getting on these in the silver equivalents, and some of the grades that we're getting on the silver side. Like one of the ones that we did get was DSB 87, and that was like our largest tin hole to date, and that ranks well below. But if you're talking critical minerals, that 0.47% tin is a significant number on a global basis. We had about 110 million tons in our initial resource that wasn't part of the MRE, but that ranks as top 10 globally. Any numbers like this, if we're talking 0.5% tin, is a significant economic value. So this is a PEA. This is really what we're working on, and this is kind of highlighting what I initially talked about, is that we've got two major targets here. We've got a major tin target that we're drilling, continuing to drill, continuing to add to the forecast. But then there's also areas that we originally had in the economic model that weren't drilled. So when you look at it from the standpoint of the resource, it's underrepresenting grade to a significant degree, because majority, if not all of our drill results have been at that 35 to 40 gram, silver. And, when the initial resource came out and it was 15, you can understand, the spacing variety of it was about 100 meters. So you are getting lots of waste in there that technically is not waste. This is kind of basically the two deposits here, two events that happened. As we continue to drill and we move into the tertiary intrusive breccia, which is the tin area, don't forget that you also have silver that's very mobile within both events. So even though we get a point, if we look at the tin and it's 0.3, and let's say we're mining, 10,000 tons a day out of that, the cost in that's about $15,000 to $16,000 a ton. Revenue is about $38,000 a ton. The silver, 25 grams in there, is enough to actually pay for the cost of producing the tin. So on a byproduct credit, we actually would get the tin for free. This is our restart of the drilling. Since this is just to April, there's other events that haven't really included in this, but I just really wanted to highlight how we're getting numbers far above what our resource was. And so that's why we're so eager to get a resource statement out by year end, just to show everybody the continuity in the increase in grade that we've gotten. This is talking about our highest grade intercept on the tin side, 213 meters of 0.5% tin. That's a significant number, and that's brought a lot of inbound calls into me, so that's an exciting thing to see. But I'd also like to point out that there was, DSB 85 that we don't really talk about too much, is that a majority of that silver, that higher grade silver, almost that 40 grams, was only 10 meters from surface. So in terms of having an order burden that, originally we thought was maybe going to be 35 to 40, it's now, 10. And this is basically it in a nutshell, where we think we're going. Resource expansion, grade enhancement, PEA by Q1 of next year. Metallurgical work, I would say we're already at the pre-feasibility stage, simply because it's polymetallic and everybody asks questions about metallurgy and polymetallics. And that's it.
Thank you, Chris. Are there any questions?
I didn't get to use my pointer, so sorry. We're right there.
There's one question there.
Do you have plans for Santa Barbara?
Well, Santa Barbara is where our main deposit will be. So that is our focus, is solely around the Santa Barbara and getting that developed. We don't talk about it too much, but we have multiple other properties in Bolivia. When we first hit our kind of successful hit in here, it's been solely, all of our focus has been on private land ownership, so we don't have to deal with any coma balls or artisanal miners or anything of that nature. So we keep it very clean from that standpoint. The big focus will be on Santa Barbara. That'll be our initial resource update that we're getting again, and then our PEA. But look for drilling on the outside of that, because technically there could be other higher grade areas that we could do in this and have kind of multiple pits that feed into our processing. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Chris, what's your budget for next year, exploration budget?
Well, that really depends on, we raised, thanks to Red Cloud, we raised around 14 million Canadian. We have about 2 million to take us through the PEA. That's kind of where we're focused, and do some more metallurgical work. So we've got plenty to get through there. And then next year, we're pushing to get our pre-feasibility basically 1 year after the PEA. So it all depends on how the numbers shake out on the infill drilling on the PEA, but we probably have enough to get us 90% there. And if the stock does well, you know, we'll have enough funding with the warrants that we have outstanding to get us through there. So, and you know, we are looking for partners to some degree, because it is a substantial, I mean, it's almost 600 million tons. It's 30,000, 35,000 ton a day operation. So it's a big earth moving exercise. I will say Bolivia is one of the, if not the cheapest place to operate a mine globally. You know, we're talking $20 a ton to move stuff here, and, you know, revenue NSRs on this is going to be 60 just on the polymetallic, and if you throw the tin in, it gets like 100 plus. So